and welcome. I'm Asuma Kataoka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. 85 Palestinians have been killed while seeking aid at UN aid trucks in northern Gaza. According to Hamas-run Gaza's Health Ministry, this is the highest toll among the repeated deaths near the aid centers. Japan's ruling coalition suffered a major setback in Sunday's upper house election, losing its majority and further weakening Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's hold on power. Meanwhile, Ishiba has vowed to stay on as leader, citing an urgent August 1st deadline to strike a tariff deal with US President Donald Trump. Russia has launched another wave of drones and missiles on Ukraine overnight, killing at least one person and igniting fires across Kyiv, according to the city officials and Mayor Vitaly Klitschko. Damage from the attack includes a subway station, commercial properties, homes, and kindergarten across 4 districts of the capital. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will meet US President Donald Trump this week in Washington, hoping to secure a more favorable trade deal before the August 1st deadline, according to media reports. Prime Minister Marcos will be the first Southeast Asian leader to visit President Trump in his second term. China's Commerce Ministry slammed the European Union's new sanctions targeting Chinese entities linked to Russia's military as mistaken and warned of a serious negative impact on China-EU economic relations, according to a statement issued today. This comes just days before a scheduled summit in Beijing on Thursday with top EU leaders, as reported by China's state media. Deaths from clashes in Syria's Sueda province have reached 1,120 people, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. This comes amid a ceasefire that appears to be holding as tensions in the Druze heartland continue to simmer. Torrential rains have caused deadly landslides and flooding in South Korea, raising the death toll to 17. Meanwhile, South Korea's Unification Ministry said it is exploring ways to improve relations with North Korea, including the possibility of allowing individual tours into the north, according to media reports. Alaska Airlines grounded all flights on Sunday after an undisclosed IT outrage disrupted its systems, marking the second time in just over a year that it has grounded its entire fleet. Meanwhile, it was hit by 7.3 magnitude earthquake on Wednesday. In a press conference, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he will stay in office to tackle rising prices, tariff talks, and economic pressures. He vows to strike a fair trade deal with the US and plans to speak with President Trump soon. Ishiba also agrees with the opposition on cash payouts to help households but rejects tax cuts as too slow. He calls for party talks on funding, pensions, and social welfare. Ishiba rules out personal changes, coalition expansions, but will work with other parties. He later apologized to the LDP for the election loss, calling it a harsh verdict on his government. Now we're joined by Tomohiko Taniguchi. Thank you very much, Tomohiko, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, the far-right party, such as Sanseito Party, has gained significant traction in this election, capturing 14 seats. What does this surge in support for conservative parties say about Japan's current political landscape?
There are many interpretations, one of which is that one of the previous prime ministers, the name was Fumio Kishida, eventually purged the conservative wing of the LDP. The Liberal Democratic Party has traditionally been a broad church, a big tent party, and that had basically two elements: socially progressive and socially conservative. but Prime Minister Kishida, the predecessor, eventually purged the conservative wing. And so the those people who previously supported the conservative element of the LDP left the party en masse, and they couldn't find alternatives. And alternatives were all of a sudden given by this new party, Sanseito, which literally is translated into Party for Political Participation, PPP, if you like. And so PPP, Party for Political Participation, has gained all of a sudden traction. So that's a new kind of phenomenon.
And Tomohiko, according to media, political scandals have been one of the key factors behind this current ruling coalition's defeat. How much of an impact do scandals like these have on political stability in Japan?
The newspaper headlines have been very much vocal about that, but I'm not sure if that's been a concern for many voters. It's primarily to do with the economic conditions, and inflation has been biting the purse of pensioners. And remember that Japan has got a huge number of pensioners. For pensioners, it is the fixed income they can get, whereas inflation bites their income, the real amount of their income. So that's one of the primary concerns. And the second is, as I said, socially conservative group of people who hitherto had been very much supportive of the LDP, left the party, lost faith in the LDP, and so they were wandering to find who they should vote for.
And now, building on that, now Prime Minister Ishiba mentioned that he would focus on trade talks moving forward. In light of his party's recent defeat, how confident are you in Japan's ability to secure favorable trade agreements with the United States?
Well, it's useless for you to ask my opinion because 99 out of 100 people in Japan would answer your question by saying, we cannot trust Ishiba, who has lost quite a few votes and who has lost faith.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Tomohiko Taniguchi, all the way from Japan. Thank you very much for your insight. Now we move on to our next news. The death toll in Gaza has been updated to at least 85 people after Palestinians were killed while trying to reach food aid. Most died near the Zikim crossing in northern Gaza. The UN says Israeli forces opened fire on crowds as aid trucks arrived. 25 trucks entered for starving communities. This marks the deadliest day for aid seekers in the 21-month war. Israel has also issued new evacuation orders in central Gaza, targeting areas where aid agencies are based. Let's have a look at what the eyewitnesses had to say.
مقطورة بتطلع الدبابة بتطب طخ فينا حصل طخ عبوب عين اللي بيحمل كيسه بياكلوا طلقوا برتمه عشان نقمة العيش ألوفات شهداء. احنا بنروح عشان جعانين، احنا بدنا ناكل بدنا نعيش. فوق المقاطير الناس بتتكتل قاعدة عشان كيس طحين فوق المقاطير.
4 مقاطير رجل جرينا على طحين طب طخ اللي ينطخ ويقع على الأرض اللي يتصاوب اللي يموت طخ شهداء مليان على الأرض واحنا نتخبى واحنا ننزل وخايفين 200 من الخوف.
The Gaza death toll in Gaza have been updated to at least 85 after Palestinians were killed while trying to reach food aid. Most died near the Zikim crossing in northern Gaza. Israel says Israeli forces opened fire on crowds as aid trucks arrived. 25 trucks entered for starving communities. This marks the deadliest day for aid seekers in the 21-month war. Israel has also issued new evacuation orders in central Gaza, targeting areas where aid agencies are based. Let's have a look at what the eyewitness had to say. The Gaza death toll has been updated to at least 85 after Palestinians were killed while trying to reach food aid. Most died near the Zikim crossing in northern Gaza. The United Nations says Israeli forces opened fire on crowds as aid trucks arrived. Now we move on to our next news. Russia launched a fresh wave of drone and missile strikes on Kyiv, killing at least one person and damaging multiple sites, including homes, shops, a kindergarten, and a subway station. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed emergency crews were deployed across 4 districts. Air raid sirens sounded overnight, sending residents to shelters. As air defenses responded, explosions were also reported in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Damage assessments are ongoing. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Russia's defense ministry reported shooting down 71 Ukrainian drones overnight on Saturday, including 13 targeting Moscow. This follows 87 drones reportedly downed on Friday, 5 of which were also headed for the Moscow region. The attacks come amid new calls from President Zelensky for peace talks, though so far they have led only to prisoner exchanges. Now we are joined by Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international security expert joining us live from Singapore. Thank you, Rohan, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what does this escalation reveal about Russia's military strategy, and how does it impact the international perception of upcoming peace talks?
The Russians want to demonstrate that they are operating from a strength perspective. So that is why they have mounted this attack. There are going to be talks sooner than later, but Russia will continue to sustain its operations so that they will be considered a power to be reckoned with, that they are not negotiating from a point of weakness, but from a point of strength.
And Rohan, now despite the ongoing strike, President Zelensky has also reiterated calls for peace talks, though these have so far only led to prisoner exchanges. What role do peace talks actually play in the current context, and what are the likely or key barriers preventing meaningful negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, according to you?
Currently, it is a stalemate because both parties are strong. Both parties are very well resourced. Both parties have suffered significantly, but both parties have the strength to sustain their fight. So these talks, in many ways, if they are very well planned and if they are supported, especially by President Putin and by the President of the United States and the European leaders, it has a chance of meeting with success. But again, it is very likely that unless these talks are well organized and conducted for a long period of time, that the fighting will renew anytime.
And Rohan, now Russia's defense ministry reported shooting down Ukrainian drones targeting the capital, Moscow. How significant are these drone attacks on Moscow for the Russian domestic narrative?
We have seen that the Ukrainian intelligence services, the Ukrainian special operations forces, they have mounted some very daring strikes, including in Russia's capital of Moscow. This has been a very painful episode for the Russians because it impacts on domestic public opinion. So naturally, Russia is very keen to detect and disrupt any such operations by the Ukrainians, and if possible, to ensure that it does not happen frequently, because it can be very embarrassing for the Russians.
Thank you, Rohan, for sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. South Korea says it is reviewing options to improve ties with North Korea, including possible individual tours, though officials declined to confirm any specific plans. The Unification Ministry stressed that North Korea must first open its tourist areas to the outside world. Here's what South Korean Unification Ministry spokesperson Koo Byung-sang had to say.
정부는 한반도 긴장 완화와 남북 관계 개선을 목표로 대북 정책을 수립 추진하고 있으며 이 과정에서 다양한 방안을 검토하고 있습니다.
The comments come after a report suggested South Korea may allow travel to North Korea's new beach resort in Wonsan. President Lee Jae-myung has pledged to ease tensions, already halting anti-North broadcasts and leaflet campaigns along the border. South Korea's tours to Mount Kumgang remain suspended since 2008 after a South Korean tourist was fatally shot by a North Korean guard. Now we're joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He's a journalist in Korea Herald, joining us live from Seoul. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, South Korea is exploring options to improve relations with North Korea. Can you tell us the significance of such gestures in the context of inter-Korean relations?
The gesture should be seen as an effort to activate the communication channel, which in recent years had been not in good shape, like almost suspended. But we should not forget that in 1995, when then President Kim Yong-sang, in a white paper, he referred North Korea as main enemy. So this has been in discussion over the last few weeks also here in the political as well as the social circles in Korea, in South Korea, that shall we forget that North Korea is the main enemy to us? Main enemy in Korean, we call it like Chu Jok. So Chu is main and Jok is enemy. So there has been some debate in the elite circles and the political circles here about that. But we should see it from the lens of President Lee, who recently has been advocating in many places, including the July 3rd press conference also. He had been reiterating that the suspension of talks and this kind of dialogue was kind of idiotic when President Yoon was in power. So he thinks that dialogue and diplomacy, if you see the legacy of this dialogue, diplomacy, politics, then we can go to the sunshine policy that was brought by late President Kim Dae-jung that time between 1998 to 2003. But if you see the entire political legacies that the Democratic Party had, after that, like after Kim Dae-jung, the tone has been softer when Roh Moo-hyun also was in power. And then recently when Moon Jae-in was also in power before President Yoon, the tone was somewhat very softer. So the President Lee wants to once again revive those legacy of sunshine policy, and he wants to start with dialogue and diplomacy. He is not going with the economic sanctions and those aspects now, because US has to be consulted on those fronts. So that is why President Lee is trying, and his government is trying to come up with a softer tone and sending a signal to both the sides, I mean the inter-Korean sides, that look, we are open to dialogue, we are open to activate people-to-people ties, and it can be started through tourism, as North Korea also looks very interested in reviving tourism through Wonsan initiative.
Dr. Sanjay, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insight in North Korea and South Korea story. Now we move on to our next news. Ecuador has extradited its most wanted drug lord, Adolfo Fito Macias, to the United States. He was flown to New York after agreeing to extradition last week. Fito, head of the Los Coneros gang, will face charges including cocaine trafficking and gun violations. He was recaptured in June after escaping prison earlier this year. His gang has ties to cartels in Mexico, Colombia, and Europe. He's the first sent under Ecuador's new 2024 law approved by public referendum. Now we are joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, this highlights how extradition agreements can serve as diplomatic tools in the fight against organized crime. So how important are these treaties in the global effort to fight drug trafficking?
This is important. In the Ecuador, the situation, the law and order situation is worsened, but at the same time, the current president tried to tackle this issue. And in this case, the current president who won the election in the April 2025 is calling the US and other countries to join this battle. And in this case, Dutch President Daniel Noboa is a right-wing politician that people believe, and at the same time, he's a very close friend of the President Trump. So that's why the US and Ecuador cooperation is progress that people expect, and this is one of the examples. So that's why when Ecuador tried to crack down these crime laws, there's a possibility that Ecuador can get the support from the United States. And so this is good news for Ecuador in this case, even if the law and order situation is worse in some case.
Dr. Satoru, we appreciate your insight. Please stay with us as we stay in the region. At least 9 people have been killed in a deadly head-on collision in western Ecuador. A pickup truck and SUV crashed early Sunday on a highway between Manta and Monte Cristo. 2 children aged 6 and 11 are among the dead. 2 others were injured. Authorities suspect of lane violation and possible overcrowding. Ecuador's traffic commission is investigating. Road accidents remain a leading killer in the country, with over 560 traffic deaths reported in just the first 5 months of 2025. Now let's have a look at what the traffic accident investigator had to say.
Sí, tenemos 9 víctimas confirmadas. Se presume una invasión de carril. Lamentablemente todos conocemos ya las 9 personas que acaban de fallecer, entonces los compañeros del cuerpo de bomberos realizaron la extracción de los cuerpos que estaban dentro de los vehículos con los instrumentos hidráulicos que ellos cuentan.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Dr. Satoru Nagao. Thank you, Doctor, for staying with us. Now, authorities are suspecting lane violations and overcrowding were the factors in this deadly crash. So from a road safety perspective, how do issues like overcrowding and traffic violations contribute to accidents, and what policy changes might help address these risks?
Yes, it is true, because at least 9 days, maybe 11 or more is expected under such kind of situation. It is clear that even if the 2 cars hits head on, this number is a little bit too many. So this means that too many people are on the car, and that was the reason many victims has happened in the accident. So that's clearly expected. But at the same time, in the Ecuador, indeed, the law and order situation is worsened. So that's why the government need to tackle the more serious crime Under such kind of situation, the police forces or the other agencies in the government focusing on more serious issue instead of the traffic something. So that's why who try to manage law and order or rule of the traffic is a matter of concern, and such kind of situation is maybe no one watch it and check it, manage it. That's why it could happen many places in the Ecuador, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for joining us today and sharing your insight. Now we move on to our next news. Alaska Airlines has issued a system-wide ground stop for all mainline and Horizon Air flights after an IT outage impacted operations late Sunday. The Federal Aviation Administration's status page confirmed. The group stop, which affected all destinations, Alaska Air Group said the outage began around 8 p.m. Pacific time and led to the temporary halt. The airline did not reveal the nature of the outage, but warned of residual impacts on flight schedules throughout the night. The FAA has yet to provide further clarity and has not responded to queries made outside business hours. Let's look at some stories from the world of Indo-Pacific. China's foreign ministry has confirmed that President Xi Jinping will meet with European Council President Antonio Costa in Beijing on 24 July. The meeting will take place as part of the 25th China-EU summit, marking 50 years of diplomatic ties between the two sides. The talks are expected to focus on strengthening political and economic cooperation, with both leaders looking to navigate ongoing trade challenges amid broader global uncertainty. China's foreign ministry confirmed that President Xi Jinping will meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Beijing on 24 July. This visit marks a high-level engagement amid global trade uncertainties and comes as both sides commemorate 50 years of diplomatic relations. The talks are expected to address economic cooperation and tensions in EU-China ties. China's foreign ministry has confirmed that Premier Li Qiang will co-chair the 25th China-EU summit in Beijing this week. The high-level meeting, marking 50 years of diplomatic ties, will see Li Qiang host European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa on 24 July. The summit comes amid rising trade tensions and global economic uncertainty, with Beijing looking to strengthening relations with the European Union. 5 people have been confirmed dead and 7 are still missing after Typhoon Haifa brushed past the Philippines. While it did not make landfall, the storm enhanced monsoon rains that caused widespread flooding. Over 800,000 people have been affected, with damage to hundreds of roads, homes, and infrastructure in Marikina. A flood alert was issued as the river rose to 15 meters. Authorities evacuated residents as power was knocked out in over 100 cities. The Philippines faces about 20 typhoons each year. 5 people have been confirmed dead and 7 are still missing after a passenger ferry caught fire off Indonesia's Sulawesi coast. The KM Barcelona 5 was headed to Manado when flames engulfed the vessel near Talai's waters, sending panicked passengers overboard. Nearly 300 people were rescued, some with the help of local fishermen. A pregnant woman is among the dead. The Coast Guard says the fire began at the ferry's stern. This comes just weeks after another deadly ferry incident near Bali. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.